How old were you when the attacks of 9/11 took place?
I was 8 or 9. I remember I was in fourth grade. Definitely remember that.
And what school were you at?
I was at DeWitt Middle School? No, I was in Herbison Woods in DeWitt.
Okay. What was that like being so young and not fully comprehending what was taking place on that day?
I remember I remember being on the playground when they announced it at our school. Um, and I I really didn't understand. I didn't understand the entire impact of it. I remember somebody scaring me and telling me that they were going to come to our school and bomb our school next.
Was
And
that an adult or a fellow classmate?
no, it's a fellow classmate.
Okay.
And they were just trying to mess with me, but I remember other students telling me, we're not a big town, nothing's going to happen to us.
Now, was it an administrator that came out and told you that the attacks occurred, or was it?
I was on the playground and I heard it. I had one of my friends come and get me, and it was over the PA system, and I remember walking over to the wall where our PA system, made the announcements, the speaker, and listening to it, but not really being able to hear it. And then after recess, we went inside, and our teachers told us about it. But there really wasn't anything else mentioned that day or anything. They just kind of briefly told us about it. I don't think we were allowed to turn on our TVs, which I remember my teacher being upset about. She wanted to watch the footage and watch the news and find out what was going on, but they wouldn't let us turn on the TVs.
Did the principal ever come into the classroom and address the situation?
No, it was just our teacher telling us.
Okay.
It was during story time, actually. I remember that.
And how did your teacher respond?
She reassured us. She told us that it wasn't, that nothing would happen to us because we're not a big target or anything. And she kind of explained terrorism and the concept of people wanting to hurt other people for political reasons, but I remember not fully understanding it.
So were you scared, or were you kind of oblivious to the situation?
I was pretty oblivious. Yeah, I was pretty oblivious. I was a little scared when somebody said what if they come to our school and blow us up, or any place around us, but.
Okay. What was the most vivid memory that you have of that day?
I remember coming home and watching my brother. He was watching it in our kitchen, and he was just flabbergasted by the situation, because he wasn't allowed to watch any of the footage, and he was in high school at the time, and they were really adamant about the teachers not turning on the TVs and not disrupting the day. And I remember he was really angry about that because he was like, this is our history, this is what's happening now, how can you not teach us this? And yeah.
Were your parents home to meet you when you got home? Or?
When I got home, no, they weren't home. But I do remember them calling me and saying, we're safe, nothing's going to happen, we'll be home at the normal time. But, they didn't really address anything with me about it or anything like that.
Did they ever pull you aside and kind of talk to you about the situation, in depth, or?
No, they really didn't. I guess just I was a pretty oblivious kid at the time, too, so that didn't help. But, I didn't really. I just remember not understanding the big deal of it. I understood that it was a big deal that a couple buildings had gotten blown up and that people had died and gotten hurt and everything. And I distinctly remember the newspapers the next day, everywhere the newspapers of the towers. But
Now, do you personally know anyone, like friends that have family members that were impacted by that day, or?
No, I actually don't know anybody. I mean, I'm sure somehow I do, but
Not that you can think of.
yeah.
Okay. And have you traveled by plane since 9/11?
I have quite a few times actually.
How soon thereafter?
Let's see. I went on vacation I believe either that year or the following year with my family, so.
Oh wow, so
Yeah.
okay.
it was
Did you ever have any reservations about traveling in an airplane, or?
No, I've never really been afraid of it. And being so oblivious when I was younger, it never scared me just because I didn't. Actually, I think I do remember being a little bit nervous the first time we went on afterwards, but mostly because security was just packed in the airport, and my parents and my brother were nervous about it. And I remember I used to travel a lot when I was younger, and so we went on planes a lot, and I remember after when I went on the plane, they had like new security systems that I hadn't seen, like the walk through they puff the air at you kind of thing. And you had to take your shoes off and take everything out of your bag, and like all the new rules. I remember all of that and being confused as to why those were put in place, just because I didn't understand the whole concept of terrorism on an airplane.
Okay. As a young adult, looking back, 10 years later, how do you view the world now? Like any different, or?
Yeah, I mean, I understand more about the world, but
Do you think the world is any safer since the attacks of September 11th?
I think the world is more cautious. I don't know if safer is necessarily the right word, because we try and plan for everything, but there's always something that you can't plan for. And safe is a relative word for everyone. Being safe in your own house is different than being safe in your place of work, or walking down the street. I mean, I've never feared getting attacked by terrorists down the street, but maybe at college, it's a big place, might be target of a terrorist attack, but I've never, living in America my whole life, and especially living in such a small area my whole life, I've never really thought about it. I've never thought about the world being unsafe, I guess, just because every place is relative and different.
Okay. If and when you have children, what will you tell them about September 11th?
I have an interesting opinion about terrorism. I believe that, again, it's all relative. Somebody blowing up the buildings, they had a purpose in mind. They believed fully something, and to them it was the right thing to do. Now, I wouldn't teach my kids that blowing up buildings are right, but I would teach them about the concepts of terrorism and the impacts that they have, and how I believe that they're wrong, but how other people may believe that they are right, and that to them that's why they did it, is because they were told their whole life that their view on life is all about like, this is how you get to heaven, and suicide bombing and stuff, and that's what they believe. And yeah, it's not right in my opinion, but it's right in theirs, and that like, these incidents shouldn't happen, but they do because of the way that people think differently. And
How old were you when the attacks of September 11th took place?
I was about 14 years old.
Okay, what was it like being so young and not fully comprehending what was going on? Like, what was the sentiment in Germany?
Well, I think our teachers and just like the news explained a lot what was going on over in the US when the attack happened. I mean, being 14, being a teenager, you're not really like that interested into like news and stuff like that. I think I was actually shopping that day when it happened, and just a week after, I think like our teachers started talking about it. We actually discussed a lot of those topics in like politics, for example. So we kind of like got an overview, like what's going on, why did it happen, but just it did not seem real at all.
Now, did you ever have any discussions with your classmates, or how did they react to the news?
Well, we were just all kind of confused because we were just like not really sure what was going on. I mean, like a terror attack, I never really heard of that before, and especially that attack happened in the US. It's just because you always know America from like Hollywood and all that. Everything is just perfect over there, and all of a sudden, I don't know, like they get attacked by
Is there
terrorists.
anything different that the teachers did that particular day to address the situation, or did they spend a lot of time talking about it?
Yeah, they definitely spend a lot of time talking about it. Like I said before, like in like politics, for example, like the subject we also had I think one or two tests about like terrorism after the attack to really like understand the background and why they did that.
And what is the most vivid memory that you have of that day?
Actually, that day when I was shopping with my friend, we went to a store kind of like Best Buy, similar to Best Buy, and I remember just like all the screens showed, New York and the two towers on fire, and there was like so many people around the screens, and there was just like silence. I don't know, everybody was just like watching the screens, and I didn't know like what was going on, so we were just like standing there and watching until we finally realized, whoa, there was like a terror attack.
Do you recall your parents or a guardian? Like, did you talk to them about the subject, or?
I don't think that I actually talked to my parents a lot about it. I talked to my aunt. She's a teacher in politics as well. So just to get a better understanding. I mean, of course, I talked to my mom. I just mentioned to her like, hey, did you hear about this and that? But we didn't really go into like any like deep conversation about why they actually did it. I just wanted to know more like the background and really just like the history, kind of like why did that happen and why New York, why America.
Okay, and obviously you've traveled by plane since 9/11 because you're here in the States. Have you ever had any reservations about traveling on airplanes since 9/11?
Like reservation, kind of, if it was.
Have you ever had second thoughts about
Oh.
getting on an airplane at all, or?
No, not really, actually. I mean, there were some thoughts, but like just like the security just improved so much that I felt safe for sure.
Now, as a young adult, 10 years later, looking back at the attacks, how do you view the world now? Do you think the world is any safer?
I do believe that the world is much safer now. People are just like really kind of like, or say like governments is just like really like more like careful about letting people into the country and just like monitoring other people. So yeah, I feel safer after the attack.